Good morning, YouTube. Welcome back. It is part 2 of the table build. If you didn't watch part 1, I encourage you to go check it out. It entails the building of the leg structures, and I headed to my buddy's house. And what you see here is my buddy telling me all of the details that he wants or doesn't want in the table itself, trying to figure out, okay, are these good enough? Does he trust me? I've known this guy for a very, very long time, and he is very meticulous and wants to make sure everything is perfect. And so naturally, he wanted to make sure everything was perfect. So here we have much debate. Is the benches too long, too wide? So ultimately we came down with this idea with 2x6s and a 2x4, splitting them with staining. You won't even know that they're different, but of course he's not a woodworker and he doesn't know that there are southern yellow pine and then there's southern yellow pine. And so he got two different types, and it's fine. Ultimately it'll stain and look fine, but he was kind of worried about that. Thankfully I convinced him otherwise. Next, I wanted to show him some of the parts of the building process that he actually gets to be part of, that he has a say in, and that I encourage him to kind of look at these things and really make this project his own. Of course, this is one of my best friends, and so I wanted to make sure he had an amazing table that he loved, that he can entertain guests on for as much time as possible. So we looked at the boards, we looked at the grain pattern. I kind of walked them through what each one looks like, and we got to a point where we really, really liked how the grain was going to be, and with the contrasting colors and making sure we do have some different variations as much as he wanted to. Of course, there's going to be spacing between these. It's an outdoor table, so letting rainwater fall through or even food items fall through. So once we got it all, we flipped it over and made sure we kept everything in order, and then got everything ready to kind of pre-assemble what this actually is going to look like. We actually used screw heads to best check how wide these pieces will be, or at least the gap between them. That's always a good thing. If you don't have a scrap piece, find something that is uniform that you can use to make everything nice. So once we got all that done, went ahead and chopped off some little bitty pieces so that way we have a nice clean edge on each side. And then I cut the stretchers for the leg pieces and got ready to fit those in. And so once all of those were done, we were able to really start moving forward. And if you're not aware, one of the best things you can do is use a speed square to keep your saw square. I actually brought my sander. I didn't use my shop vac because we were outdoors the whole time for this. I sanded everything down. This is just the first sanding. Totally made my friend sand everything else. So I did a little bit just so you can see that I do sand usually. But then I did everything. I apologize for the shot. I had everything ready, and then I realized I'm right-handed and I have to cut it on the other side. So you get a nice beautiful picture of my tuchus right there. So here I'm laying everything out, making sure everything fits correctly, and I praise my God, because everything fit just as I expected it to. I got the screw, I got the square pre-drilled, screwed them in, and started to get ready for the final assembly. And I was thinking, we started about 9 a.m. This is like 10:30 in the morning, and I'm thinking, man, we are flying through this project. We're going to be done in no time. So I get everything screwed up, get everything nice and square. Wanted to make sure I get you a good view on this. I don't want you to miss out, okay? Make sure everything's plumb. And look at that. There's one leg system. There's the other one. We got the boards on there to kind of symbolize what the table would actually look like. We started to get ready to add everything on, make sure all of our cuts are perfectly in line, make sure we have the right overhang. I have this skirt to go all the way around to provide rigidity to the table. All of this is in the plans that I sent him. I don't have plans for this table specifically, but I made plans for this so I can give him kind of an idea of what I'm looking at, what this table is going to look like. So I have this stretcher all the way around. This was in the plans. We get it. I get it all together, and then we flip the table, and it's square. But this piece is causing the leg to stand up. Now, maybe I'm just crazy, but this threw me for a loop. We were so close to being done, and all of a sudden, the table is not touching the ground. Now, granted, this is going to be on like gravel, and so ultimately you could throw some gravel underneath it, but that's not who I am. I want everything to be absolutely perfect, and we are on a semi-level spot on his concrete for his back patio. And so we did everything. We kind of tried everything. We ended up just grabbing another 2x4 that was a little bit straighter because, of course, when you buy Home Depot and Lowe's lumber, of course, they're not straight. They bring that stuff. It dries while it's in the store. So we found another one that's straighter, and we did the exact same thing. We put it on there, made sure that it was good, and bada boom, bada bang, we were in business. So I got all that ready. I checked everything. Then I wanted to go ahead and throw all of the pieces on there just so I can show him how cool this table is going to look. So I did that. Showed him all the spacing, everything that I was expecting. This is what the table is going to look like. That's what I told him. So he's looking at it. He wants to see everything exactly how it is. So he gets the spacers, and we're using those screws, and we're putting it all together. And then I'm like, let's get an actual bench, and let's show. And he says, Franklin, it's too tall. I said, no, it's not. Look. He said, no, it's too tall. We need to take it apart and chop it down. And at this point, I'm not going to lie, our friendship was tested. Because I had to change my entire plan based on his desire. So here you see, if you remember in part 1, I made a mistake and I had to add wood on. I literally just cut off every piece that I added on for my mistake. So that mistake was actually the correct size that I was supposed to make it according to my friend's desires. And I was livid because I spent all this extra time trying to get everything together. And I don't know if you've ever been to that point with a friend where you're like, I just did it exactly how my plan said. I even made a mistake with the plans, fixed that mistake, and now I get to your house and you're saying, nope, change it all. Have you ever been there? Let me know in the comments. Tell me a story about a time that you and maybe a friend or a relative got into it because you told them how it was going to happen and they said, no, I don't want that. So at this point, I'm like, I'm just going to glue it. And if you say you want something else, then you're up a creek because it's glued and this thing ain't coming apart. And so I was done. I was frustrated and I didn't handle it the best way. So I brought pocket hole screws to do this just in case. And that was way too much work. I didn't want to have to do every single pocket hole screw and have to screw them all or drill them all out and then screw them in. And it was just going to be a pain. So I just did this. This is like a claw screw, a toe screw, I think, maybe. I forget what exactly it's called. It's a really unique way of doing things. No one else does it. It's just me. But basically, make sure you kind of go 90 degree at first and then angle more towards a 45 degree angle to start your drill bit. And then once you get it angled, it's a simple way to do it. None of these screws are seen. It's kind of a quick and dirty trick. If you want it to be more pristine, you can use pocket hole screws. But this does almost the exact same thing. And so if you're lazy, this is a great way to do it. So now I'm laying out a stretcher to provide some support to make sure everything stays rigid. That was the issue that I was coming in now that we've changed everything. I wanted everything to maintain rigidity. And so I made Ryan help me sand all these other pieces down again. And so I marked them all, got them all cut. And you can see in the edge, you can see that sawdust just shooting out from his little battery-powered sander that he was borrowing. And so I went ahead, I laid it out, and I did what any sane person would do. I cut wood. So I had already measured, I got everything good, and it's always best to not measure, just mark the piece. That way you dodge any issues. And so also use the piece you're going to put in there to find the depth of your saw. Also, make sure that you actually have your battery out. I just watched old John Malecki almost chop his finger off because he didn't pull his battery out before he did something. So even the pros, the YouTubers, whatever, they can have accidents too. Pull your battery out when you're doing saw adjustments. So I did one of my least favorite things to do, but thankfully we were outside, and I started to just kind of saw it all out and do it kind of, but I was like, I know that you guys are just taking this beautiful time out of your day. You're probably sitting on the pot, pooping. If you're pooping, put a little poop emoji in the middle. But that's not an enjoyable part. There's a better way to show how to do all of this. So I'm going to make sure that after I get this one done, I show you some nice, beautiful things. So check this out. Now, besides that snag up, wasn't that so satisfying for all of these pieces just getting it chopped out and just beautiful. Of course, my saw work needs some work, so I had to clean up the edges and then sand down some of these parts. But overall, if you don't have one of these Japanese pull saws, this is just a really cheap one from Amazon. It's like $8. I'll leave a link in the description for this, as well as all of the items that I use. I shouldn't say all of them. Most of the items I use, at least the ones that you can find on Amazon, sandpaper and things like that. So check out my links in the description. It is affiliate links, so I do get a kickback, but it costs nothing for you. So I went ahead and did a quick 45-degree chamfer on all of these with the saw. I didn't even measure. I just did it. Again, I was kind of frustrated still at this point, and it actually was almost perfect. I was really proud of my eyeballing skills for that specifically. And I just attached it to the skirt, and that gave some massive rigidity to the entire thing. So that added about 2.5 hours to this project. I was almost done. I was getting ready to attach it to the base, and then Ryan asked that I would change some things, and so I did. And now we're at this point. It's like, I want to say it's like 2:30 at this point. So we're checking everything, making sure everything's together. And I'm just putting screws. I'm screwing it all together. There's plenty of space between each piece, so any movement that it would have, it'll have enough to stretch and contract, and it shouldn't crack in any capacity, because the spacing is the issue that you have whenever you need wood to expand and contract. Is typically whenever you glue them all together on the edge grain. So just be aware of that if you're ever going to build, especially an outdoor table. If you noticed, all that I did was screw in on the braces, and it turns out towards the edge of the table, it wasn't perfectly secure, and my buddy wanted it to be more secure. So we went through, and on each of them underneath, I screwed in to make sure that every single board from the top is secure fully, completely. I didn't think they would break. It's not like he's going to move this table very often. But on the off chance he does, if someone does pick it up and somehow they move it too quickly, they could theoretically crack one of the boards. And so to provide some safety for that, I put some toenail screws in, and we finished the table. So that's the tabletop. All it needed was a quick sanding to 220. Or maybe it was 120. I think it was just 120. That's right. It was only 120. I didn't think going above 120 for an outdoor table was really worth it. He's going to stain this later, and so 120 is all I went to, and he finished that up. That was part of his punishment, was he was going to sand the table, and as you can see, light was quickly fading for us. This is in Thanksgiving time, and so light quickly was going away. So while he did that, I went ahead and cut the notches for this stretcher piece that goes underneath. It looked a lot lighter than it was outside, but went ahead and notched it. I did all of this work, and then we ended up not liking it, and we went down another route for this. But ultimately, he has a stretcher that stretches between and allows more stability between the table legs, and it just is more better. And this was a terrible job on my part. I was at this point just trying to get done, and I wasn't paying attention to my saw cutting, and I ended up cutting it at an angle, and it wasn't great. And so I need to work on that. For anybody who works with pull saws or hand tools specific, it's a little bit difficult sometimes if you're not paying attention or you haven't done it in a while, or for me, you rarely do it. You really got to pay attention to the angle at which you're cutting. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of us usually use more power tools, because it's a little simpler. There's not as much fine tuning with it. But I got it in place, and then I screwed it all the way through and put a dowel in there to kind of hold it in place, and ultimately just finish that up so that way he would have some capacity. Actually, no, I forgot. It ended up not working super great. So I put the dowel in and I just put it in there as a pin just for now. He came back and he redid it in another way. But I think a pocket hole screw, to be honest, or just screwing in from the side would be the best option. You live and you learn. You know, there's a lot of mistakes made on this project, and that's a super important thing. But that concludes the table. So I did some matching benches, if you remember from the beginning. He wanted the 2x6, 2x4, 2x6 pattern. And so it's assembled almost the exact same way as the tabletop. Had to make sure that these pieces were the perfect width, and got the legs to the table, to the benches, all set up, and it went together super smoothly. Drilled it all together, and then I measured the piece that would go at the top. And once I had everything cut, I went ahead and glued and screwed everything together to get ready to begin the super arduous process of putting in the bench top to the leg. So here's that same concept. I wanted to have a little bit of a reveal, and so I did do pocket holes on the first one. This is the best way to do it, to be honest. I would recommend, if you're going to make this table for yourself, do the pocket holes. Take the extra time, do the pocket holes. It's definitely worth it. Get yourself a spacer block to put underneath there. Do the pocket holes. They're going to be stronger. They're going to be more reliable. But the reality is, it was, I believe, 7:30 at this point, and I was ready to be done with this project. So the other ones I didn't pocket hole. I just toenailed, screwed them in, and got everything ready. Set out the posts as I wanted them, measured, and cut the pieces for the stretchers. So that way there was a little bit of an apron as well on the benches. And again, did some toenail screwing and got those all nice and purdied. My buddy cut that other piece for me, and then I fitted it in, got it on there, and then what I ended up doing was I did 3 screws on each side, so it is very strong still. Yes, pocket holes would be better, but ultimately this holds fine. I didn't even glue it just in case you wanted to take it apart and transport it somewhere. But a super, super simple bench build. After this, I added some blocks. Sorry for the camera work. My buddy thought he was trying to help. It is what it is. Sorry about that if you got a little headache from it. But after this, I just added some blocks. I made sure everything was secure before I added the base to the top. Made sure everything fit. Everything went well. Sat on it. Man, long, hard day's work. Spaced it all out and attached the seat to the base. I guess that's the right terminology. There's those blocks I mentioned. The sole purpose of that is to give me something to screw into the 2x6 and the 2x4. So I didn't have to do a bunch of toenails again. In this society, you got to be careful how you talk about feet. Just saying. Big shout out to my buddy. He did help. He was in it. He knew that he had made me mad, and he was really patient with me, even though I was angry. So thank you, man, for letting me come and film the building of this table. It was wonderful, and we are still friends, in fact. So hope you all had a wonderful time. Go build you one, and have a wonderful night.